Okay, so I'm back, and we're getting down to the nitty gritty of getting close to the end. I know this has been a pretty long video, and if you're still with us, thanks for hanging around. So the next section that we're going to do is advancing the cause. What we're going to do is we're going to make a gas metaball force for pyro sims. And I think the way to do this is I'm going to make my standard kind of pyro sim. There's a couple of caveats when I do a pyro sim, but we'll get there. So we'll start with a box just to kind of define our domain. I'm going to take a look at Mr. Tommy here again just so we can get some sense. I'm not going to do this at scale, but I do kind of want to have something that is let's see, copy this, paste this over here, copy relative reference. We'll take this, copy parameter, paste copy relative reference. We'll divide that by 2, and maybe we should subtract like 0.1 from it. That should give me something kind of close to the origin, and I should have centered it. Oh, we'll just zero this, tab, zero that. Now we're centered. Oops, Control Z. We're centered somewhere near the origin. We got a box. Maybe we'll make this guy a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit taller. That way we have a real sense of, okay, yeah, that's probably pretty good. And make it null. I always do this. It's kind of my standard setup. I'm going to call this get bounds. So that would be the bounds of our pyro sim. And let's see, that would be like our max bounds. Let's see, how do I want to do this? I think maybe the best way to do this is I'm just going to put down, I'll put down a sphere, and that'll be kind of our source. Put down a sphere and move them up, squish them down a little bit. Points from volume. Just get some points in there. Make sure I add a P scale. And I think we're going to use this a little bit later, so we might as well do it now. Let's take a look at, I'm going to make these points a little bit bigger, so just so we can see them. And the other thing we're going to do is we're going to put a null in here for C, for Control C. And one of the things we'll probably do right away is just give ourselves some sort of voxel dimension, right? So that's always a good thing to do when you're making a pyro sim, vox dim. Copy that in, paste this in, and hit apply. And I think this is defaulting to 0.1. Yep, it is. So we'll just set this to 0.1. And that way everywhere we go, we kind of are just referencing this. And this will be where we test and zoom stuff up. So paste relative reference. So this will be an important concept later down the line that we're going to deal with, which is generating some cell noise. Cell noise is very important to the way that I work sometimes, but we're going to do a little bit of cell noise here. So if I remember correctly, one thing I like doing is vector my LUT equals at P. And then I like probably do something like this, edit parameter, and I like doing float. I'm going to call this S for size, right? And we'll make that 1 for now. And what I like doing is go my LUT times equals quantity of 1.0 over CH yes, this will make sense in a little bit. Just follow along with me and bear with me for a moment. So now I've got a LUT. Now, if I remember correctly, there's a few things I need for cell noise. And what I'm going to need is float F1 and F2. I also need int a seed. And if I remember correctly, let's see if I can bring up, hold on one second. And let's look at W noise. I think W noise might be a little bit simpler. That's what I'm looking for. Position, seed, float, float. So that's what we got here. We got position, seed, float, float. And one thing that's important to know is anytime that you see an ampersand in front of one of these variables in this function, that is basically being passed through what is called pointer math. So we're basically sending in a variable, it's going to reset that variable, and we're going to get that back in how we send it. So the way that we do this is we just go vnoise, and we follow that right there. So the position is going to be my LUT, which is going to be my lookup, and the seed, and we have F1, and we have F2, right? And that should give us, that will give us a random seed, and that will give us an F1 and F2. So now the thing we can do is go float my U, which is an arbitrary value, and go F2 minus F1. And now we'll just go at CD equals my U, and let's just see what that looks like. And as you can see, we start getting some sort of pattern there. And if I move the size down, you can see we start getting a little bit of a noise pattern. And right away you can tell there isn't a lot of resolution in this. So let's go 0.04 for now, just so we can see a lot of points. There we go. And now you can start seeing that Verneuil kind of cell pattern. And what we're doing is we're getting that from this value is a distance from the center of the point, and this is another distance from another center of the point. It's hard to explain, but you subtract those two and you end up with these cells. So one thing you can do when you subtract those values, right, is you can kind of subtract a little bit more. So if we go edit parameter interface and we add ourselves a little bit more, we'll go something like T. We'll call this one up. We'll go one up just below the S. Click, drag below the S. We'll call this T. We don't need this to be very much, so we'll make this like a range of 1, and I might make this a logarithmic float just so I've got a little bit more movement in here. And so I think that if I just take my U, go my U equals max, because I don't want to go below 0, max 0, my U minus CH T. And we take a look at this, apply, accept. And as we start subtracting so we're getting kind of eating away at those cells, right? So that's an interesting thing to do. And one thing that we're also doing is that right now we're not getting any three-dimensional, no time-based noise. There's a way of getting around that. I think if we go down all the way, there's a vector 4 down here, vector 4. So we could pass this a vector 4 and put in the third vector as time. So let's just make this vector 4. And we can do this. We can go same thing. Go my LUT dot W equals at time. And now what we should see is we should see it changing over time. And if we want that to go faster or slower, we can just multiply that time factor. So we could make this go slower by going times 0.1, and now it will evolve much slower, right? Tab, rasterize, volume, rasterize attributes. Yeah, this thing. So we should have a P scale on there. If we look, there's a P scale, and we have a CD. And instead of CD, CD is good for looking, but we can go F at density equals my U, same thing, just a way of looking at it. Click. And we'll plug this into here. Let's, the same thing, we'll take this. This is our copy. This is going to be our voxel size. And the attribute we're going to use is density. And maybe we'll just kind of crank up the P scale a little bit. So I had a little bug in there. I had an extra I because My hands don't work as well as I kind of wish they would. So I had an extra eye in here. But here you can see we're starting to get a little bit of what could be a source. Now, one thing that I would say is that when I do pyro, one way that I do pyro is I only source and work with temperature. That's all I really care about. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this density and rename it to temperature. And just because I kind of feel like that's all I really need. And we're going to go make a null and say get source. So that's going to be our pyro source. Save, because I've done enough work that I don't want to lose it. So now let's make our dot network. So go into a dot network, and I like calling this sim. I don't know why, but I do. And we're going to dive in here, and we're going to do sparse smoke object. Bink, lay it right there. And I don't know if I still have this in there, relative reference. So I did. So now we've got everybody starting to line up with the same thing. We're going to do max size. And if we do this, I've written this expression a million times. I get a little tired of writing it over and over again, but dot slash, get bounds. And we want the X component of that. So now we're copy, tab, paste. I want the Y, tab, paste, want the Z. Now here come my dogs. And we're going to want the bounding box of the same thing, BBOX. And we're going to be doing the same thing, dot slash, get bounds. And this is DX size, all caps. Copy this, tab, paste, and then go back and change the Y, tab, paste, change the Z. And that should be our max bounds. It's always good to check. Yep, those are our max bounds. So again, when I simulate, I only care about temperature. That's just me. I think it's coming from ILM for a while. And so we're going to turn on temperature. We're going to take a look at that. I'm not going to remap it. I'm going to put on the sparse, oh, I'm hitting all sorts of things. Tab, smoke, sparse solver. Yep. And plug that bad boy in. And there's some things here that I'm definitely going to have to change around. Enable sparse solving is on. Fields, yeah, I guess that's all good. I think one of the things that I always am a little concerned about when I do this is in the advanced tab, it's the reference fields all become temperature. And I'm going to copy this because I think there's other places I got to do it. Sparse, I'm going to leave that as is. Advection, extra fields. I'm assuming that it's going to advect temperature. Fields to correct will correct temperature. Hourglass filtering, I guess I'm going to leave that on. Somewhere in here I remember being advection forward Euler. Simulation, what was it? Oh, advection reflection. Someone said set this to single and just leave it. No, that's great. The other thing is I don't want any blurring, and the cooling rate I'm going to set this way down, almost to nothing, just so that I kind of get some sense of that. We're going to let temperature do a lot, so we'll let that do its thing. One of these now is sourcing, and I think it's this one here. So I'm going to come off of here and just make a merge. I'm going to put a merge here just so that it's easy to get to, and I think that's sourcing. Okay, great. And volume source, blick, and I've been told to just kind of re-bless that. So again, I don't care about density, so I'm not even going to source it in. Plug that in. Fields to match. Again, this is going to be temperature and a large field to contain sources. And again, okay, temperature, vel. I don't have vel right now, but that's okay. Particles, instancing. Is there anything else here that I have to worry about? Oh yeah, we just need to go get it. So dot slash get source. And if I go back to frame 1, I'm hoping, click, that I should see some temperature jump into the box. And hopefully we'll get to the top of the box, top of our bounds, And it should, we're hoping, max bounds at some point. We're hoping it will clamp out. So far, our box is getting pretty big. How big was that bounds allowed to get? Our bounds was allowed to get pretty big. So we're going to come out here. We might as well import the fields. Save. We've done a lot of work. So tab, import, dot import fields. And I just kind of drag this guy into there. Oh, one thing also I always do is I just always call this smoke. That way when I go to grab this object, when we go to bring it in, it's just always default object, and I just go smoke. It makes my life easy. And again, we're going to import, see if we still have temperature there, and we'll also import vel, and vel will just make invisible. The other thing I almost always bring into is pressure. It's always a kind of an interesting thing to look at when you need to look at something. Pressure I use a lot for control fields and stuff. So let's see what this looks like. So we got our berth, and I guess I really did make quite a big bounding box. Really putting really lighting Tommy on fire here. So you can see this is just temperature, and we're getting a good look at it. So now what I want to do is, one thing that I will do is I'm going to make my little source sphere a little bit bigger. Just think the radius, copy this bad boy, copy him, paste relative reference. I'll just make him a little bit bigger and maybe a little bit taller. And we'll let that run again. That way we just get a little bit more voxels kind of going. And for the sake of making life fast and easy, we're going to crank this back up to something like 8. One thing that I do quite a bit too is I'm a big fan of fit 01. And I'm going to go 1. And I'm going to remember that at 0.04, that was a pretty good real size that I kind of liked. I'm kind of storing it. Right now it's just going to be 0.08. This way we can just sim, and we're just going real fast. I'm not going to make this sim look pretty. I'm just using it as something to put the metaball force into, and just to kind of give us a look at what it looks like to kind of generate another event. Okay, so let's start talking about building the pop metaphors. Let's just build that bad boy. Let's put our metaball in like we did before. So going to put a metaball here somewhere in the center. We're going to make it a decent size, something like this. And we're going to put down our force. And for this instance, remember the force, it wants to suck in radio force unless we make it negative. So we're going to make this negative, and we're going to make it pretty big. So we're going to go power of something like 10 to the 10th. We just want it to be obnoxiously like an obnoxious force for right now. And we're going to put down a null. We're going to put down a null. We're going to put down a switch. And we're going to put down up. And on this switch, we'll go something like $F equals 4. $FF equals 4. So on frame 4, we're going to turn it on, turn it back off. Put down a null here. Call this get force. Copy this if we want. Okay, so we're going to go in here, and if we look, somewhere in here should be advection, and there's the forces, right? Okay, so we're going to come off of here, make a merge, just so we can get into the forces, right? All right, here we go. Give ourselves a little bit of space to work with. So we need to make ourselves a new OTL. So we're going to start with a little subnet action and create digital asset and do the same type of naming convention, D4 effects, : and we're going to call this gas field meta force. Hopefully I don't already have one of those somewhere. This is hopefully something with a unique new name. Otherwise I kind of make a mess. So let's just hope and pray that. Okay, and inputs. You know, I think we should be allowed to make inputs. Let's see what some of these other let's see what the gas wrangle let's do the same thing the gas wrangle does. So the gas wrangle allows for an input, so we'll allow for an input. What happens if you do that? Yeah, input 1, it plugs in. Okay, well, we'll do the same thing. So we'll allow for an input, and the things I like to do is I always like to make sure that I have a folder called controls, copy and paste, and hit apply. So far, no bugs. And so let's see, we got this guy. We'll plug him into our forces. And one of the things that we're going to need, of course, is going to be that string to get metaballs. And same thing, this is just going to be input. This could be metaball input. And this, well, I guess this really shouldn't be a string. So I guess that's wrong. So what we really want this to be is probably more like an operator path. We're going to actually need to go get that. So plug that into there. Okay, so now this will be metaball input. Might as well call it something good. Now paste. Okay, and if we go like that, and now I think I should be able to paste up because I lost that. So we're going to go cancel. I think we know this would be .. / get force. That should be our metaballs, right? And it's fine that it's like this. I'll show you later down. We're going to copy this right away. We're going to dive in and we're going to put down a gas wrangle, gas field wrangle, and we'll plug that bad boy in. And on the we're going to go like this. We can go edit parameter interface, and I'm going to add a string here, right? Boom, up string, right there. And we'll call this F again for file, FF, apply. We'll paste this in here, paste absolute reference, and if we look, what we get is that. So what we can do is we can go op full path, right? And now we double check that and we middle click up full path. That I would have thought that would have worked. So we go like, okay, I thought that would have worked. And you middle click on this and it doesn't seem to be working. And it happens to the best of us. But if I use this instead of CHS and I go SOP, now if we middle click on this, we'll see that we get the full path to that object. We can also add the little op colon in there so we don't have to worry about that later. And now we've got the whole op colon syntax to our metaball. So now the trick is turning this into into a force. And this isn't going to be as hard as we all think it's going to be. So I'm going to hit apply for now on the OTL and hit accept. And we're going to go up. And again, we're going to go here and go pop metaball force. And same thing that we've been doing in all of these examples. We're going to just go in here and appropriate code. Take this guy. He's already selected from all the other times we've been taken from him. We're going to go back into here. We're going to paste it in there. And I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to copy and paste him. This is going to be my backup. Just in case I screw this up, I've got a backup. So now this is going to be this, and we'll make it out so that we know this is our output. That should be our output. We'll go out. Okay. So a lot of the same things are going to apply. This is probably going to give me an error. We're going to go expression, edit string, and all the things that were wrong the last time are still going to be wrong this time. So we're going to have to make a string my file, and that's just going to equal CHS $F. Things get a little bit trickier to debug because we don't have any points that we can really look at. These are volumes, voxels. A little harder to get a spreadsheet out of voxels, so we kind of have to be very careful, but we'll be fine. Remember, all of our P's are wrong, so we're going to go in there and change the P's, right? Change the P. Where's the P? Change the P here. Change the P here. And to look for them all. There's another one. At P. Axis, axis, axis. We're going to look at P there. And let's see. I think there's probably, there's a couple more. At P here. At P there. Here P, there P, everywhere P, P. Okay, and we're going to hit apply. We're probably still going to have a little bit of an error in that force hasn't been defined. So we're going to do the same thing we did before. So we're going to go vector force. We're going to define that. And again, that kind of acts as a sum because force keeps being force plus equals, right? So the thing that we're going to want to do is in these, we have a field called vel. So V at vel at the end of this is going to plus equal our force. Okay, so one thing we have to be a little careful of sometimes when we're just plussing in forces is that forces plus, 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 plus up every time step. So if we end up doing time step cooks, we might want to do something like force times equals at time inc. So basically what's going to end up happening is based upon, you know, whether or not we have substeps going on, what the time increment is, it's going to multiply down the force by that amount. So we might need to just, our initial instinct is that we're going to not have enough force. That's why we set it so high in the first place. But like, let's see what happens here. So now we plus equals that. I'm going to hit accept. Let's do one step. And remember, we're not going to see any guides or anything like that. But on frame 4, we should see, boom, something happened. And then it got strong again. So we really knocked the crap out of it, I think. So let's take a look here. Something happened, but it was so immense. Let's take this force and let's just go down to something like 1. And instead of turning it on and turning it off, we'll just leave it there for a while. And let's just see what happens. We're just going to leave our metaball force, and we're just at a power of 10 pushing out. Let's see what happens now. Okay, doesn't look like too much is happening, right? So let's try it again. Let's crank it up a little bit. Let's go. Oh, now you see it's really going, right? Boom. Okay, so now part of the reason why, let's go escape. So now we see a really big change in that, right? So I'm going to give ourselves, just because we're exploding something so big, I'm going to give ourselves 4 time steps. We got things cooking pretty fast. So what happens if we give ourselves 4 time steps? Boom. Go to frame 4. Boom. Now we see a great big explosion. Now this is starting to look a lot like an atomic bomb. That's one of the first things I noticed when I built this thing. It's like, wow, this is really looking like that footage that you see from all of the 1950s footage of like Bikini Atoll. You get these super beautiful jellyfishes out of this technique. So one of the things that also happens though, right? So we have a little bit of force there, and you can see we get a great big explosion out of that. It might be nice to come up with some way of noising this up, right? And a lot like what we did here with our whirly noise, I'm going to put in the same type of code, the same type of thing into the force here. So let's give ourselves a little bit of here we go, edit. And I'm going to give myself a new little folder, and this is going to be a simple folder, and we'll call this velocities, right? Hit apply, and let's try this. We're going to need the size of our noise, so this will be vel cell noise size. Copy, tab, paste. And right now we'll default to 1. 1's probably fine. And remember the things we needed there. We needed a size, but we also needed like a little bit of vel cell noise T. And basically what the T is kind of a way of eating it in. And if you remember, we didn't need much, right? That was kind of a logarithmic float. And I'm just going to set this as something like 0.24. And it's one of my lucky numbers, right? So we're going to subtract that in a little bit. And the other thing that I might do is I might give ourselves a little bit of an amp, right? So vel cell noise amp. Copy, tab, paste. Okay. Apply. And the amp should be something like well, maybe we'll make it something like 2. I'll leave it 1 for now, but the ability to amp it up. Okay, so this is really just going to be down here near the bottom. So we'll expression, edit string. Down here near the bottom of our force, we're going to multiply force by cell noise. And again, a lot of this, I'm going to do a lot of the same thing that we did with making the source, which is vector my LUT equals at P, just storing the P position. And we're going to make that a vector 4, might as well. And then what we're going to do is my LUT dot W equals at time. I think this might need to be at sim time, which is a little bit different than time. So I think sim time is a legitimate function. Sim time, at sim time, just make sure at sim time we spelled it right. Those can sometimes get you a little bit messed up, and we'll double check at time inc, time inc, yep. So just in case we're doing some, retiming on the top level of the sim, it's probably a good idea to keep the cell noise moving by that. And we didn't really multiply that by a channel. We probably could have. So ch, maybe call this cell noise time, and we called all that vel cell noise time. And we don't have that as a function on this. So we're going to have to probably add that to a few of these. Edit parameter interface. And again, this is going to be for the noise. Vel cell noise. And so we created one called, we call it vel cell noise time. And we'll copy this and we'll paste that there. And we're going to need one at the top level, a little bit of housekeeping. And, we will call this vel cell noise. And we had 3 of those again. We had vel cell noise size. Doop, doop, doop. So we have vel cell noise size. We're going to have one called T, which will be for getting the gutter. This one's going to be time. Time. Probably should be up here. And this will be amp. And this will be amp. And this probably should be set to 1. This is going to be 0.24. This is going to be, so this is a multiplier to time. So we'll leave that at 1 for now. And cell noise size, we'll leave that at 1 for now too. Okay, and I want this to not be a tab, but more like a simple, well, okay, yeah, that looks right. And this could live inside of controls. Apply. Yep, that looks better. Okay. Now we're going to probably need the same things here. Time scales down there, cell noise time. So let's just, I wish it was as easy as taking all this and going copy parameters, going here, going edit parameter interface, and going here, and going paste, and hitting apply. And we'll just get rid of this one. Delete, apply. That's fine. Okay, so now we just kind of have to do a little bit of copy this and paste, copy relative ref, up, copy parameter in, paste, copy relative ref, paste, copy relative ref, up, copy parameter, go in, paste, copy relative ref, up, copy parameter, all this housekeeping, paste, copy relative ref. Okay, except that's all good and fine now. Except, and so we have all this code over here. So now we've got multiply my P times sim type times my cell noise. Let's see if it's still the case. My cell noise time. Yeah, that looks right. Okay, so that's going to be that. And if we remember, we needed an F1 and F2. Then we needed, for whirly noise, we needed seed, so int seed, right? And then it was easy as W noise and my LUT. And I think it was seed, then F1, then F2. And if I remember correctly, we're going to create a arbitrary variable called my_u, which is going to start out as F2 minus F1, and then we're going to do my_u is going to equal the maximum of my 0 and my_u minus ch, and this is going to be minus ch, and this is going to be vel cell noise t, and make sure that was really a capital T and not a lowercase t. Yep. So that will subtract in some space, so we have some areas where it's not, and then we're going to go my_u times equals ch vel cell noise amp. Right now that's just 1, but we could amp it up to really see the extreme. And let's see. The other thing that we forgot to do was at this point go my LUT times equals 1.0 divided by ch vel cell noise size. And this is going to be hard to see, so this is going to take a couple of tries of seeing it actually work. So now what we should see is that we should get a little bit of some cell noise breaking up our spaces around where we're at. And we're just going to multiply our force by that cell noise. So force is going to be times equal my_u. And it'll look a lot like how we did in our sourcing. And we hit apply. Didn't see any errors. And let's see how that changed the way our sim ended up looking. Remember, it had that great big beautiful, and here on the outside, so here, it might be good just so that we can take this parameter and just kind of have it available to us when we're down in there. I sometimes do that. I'll just pull a parameter tab up. So here we go. And it burst, and we got a little bit of stuff. Oh, frame 4, boom. Look at that cell noise. Just broke it up into all sorts of bits and pieces. See that? Very interesting. It really multiplied it down. So let's really amp that up. We'll go up to like 10. So where we have positive values in the cell, it should be 10 times stronger when there's no place in the cell. And boom. So a little bit of extra noise can really add to that. You know? And if we want to go back to where that noise really isn't having much of an effect, right? We can just go back to, well, I guess one way that we could have done this is, we know that this is going to be 0 to kind of 1. We probably could have remapped this, instead of just multiplying it up, we probably could have remapped it so that we had some. Why don't we do that? Why don't we do a little bit of remapping? Because I think if I just put this at 0 and put this at 1, I'm still going to have a breakup of cell noise in there. I guess one thing I could do is make the cell size bigger. Let's see what that does. Boom. Yeah, you can see like the cell size is definitely bigger and it's blowing up in different directions. What if we just didn't want it to be affected by the noise at all? That might be how much we want to have it affected by. Is it maybe that's what we should have done, is that no matter what, it's some, and we could have multiplied it up instead of knocking it down to 0. So why don't we do that? That's probably a little bit better. So down here, instead of multiplying it just up, so the max value would go down to 0 to 1. And so then I think maybe what we do is we go 1 plus that. And so no matter what, we'll always have some. Take the cell size back down to something legitimate like 1 and let it blow up. Boom. Very interesting. Okay, cool. So let's, one more thing before we get too far into this is, see if I like that again. So this is my u times that. So it's 1, and it had 1, that goes 2, and we multiply it, and then we multiply it by 1. Multiply it by 1, and this is the gutter, 0.24. That's the gutter. I guess maybe we should do something like, if there's no cell amp, right, then we just leave it alone and don't use any cell noise. So my force times equals, so yeah, times equals 1. So yeah, I think I'm doing this just in the wrong place. So this should really be here, 1 plus my u. So no matter what, it's 1, and if my u is 0, yeah, that's better. Sorry, it took me a second to figure out that that's what I wanted to do. So now if we set this back to 0, so let's start this again. We start this at 0, no cell noise, and maybe type properties. That's probably a better place to be. Cell amp, start it with 0, so there isn't any. Do no harm. Oh yeah, this is just going to tell me that we have a reference to something inside there. That's all right. Hit accept. And let's go up again and hit go. And boom. Okay, there we go. There's that completely clean, atomic bomb explosion again, right? So now if we go back and we go in and we give this, I thought we had our parameters open somewhere. Parameters, oh, there it is. Okay. Oh. If we give this back to 1 now and blow it up, what we should see is a little bit of breakup in that. See, there's some waves and breakups in that explosion now. And that carries through to some of the rest of this stuff. I think that's pretty cool. I know this has been a really long video, and I appreciate everybody sticking around. There was one last step I promised that I would demonstrate how I do this, and that's actually adding some extra temperature into the sim where there is a lot of force. So this is actually not going to be that hard, but it does take a little bit of housekeeping. So just like before, we're going to have to do a little bit of interface stuff. So go in here, type properties, and cell, and I'm going to put this on here, and we'll go and make this simple. And this will be temperature sourcing. Temperature source, right? Or sourcing. I guess sourcing, that's fine. Now the thing is we're going to want to define, we're probably going to need a ramp. That's probably easier to do in here. Probably easier to do on this. I'm going to copy and paste this in case I make a big mistake. This we don't need anymore because we've already gone past that. But here, so I'm doing this on the wrangle, and then I'll transfer it up here. Edit parameter interface. In fact, we'll just close this for now. It's going to tell me that I have a reference to something. That reference really is just this expression that we're using. It's complaining about this because it doesn't see it as relative, but it is. It actually is relative. It's just being a little finicky about it. So one of the things that we're going to do is where we have a lot of force, we're going to birth some temperature. And we might only birth it in a certain ring of force. That makes sense? Yeah, because we might want it just along the edge of a certain area of the density. So I'm going to give myself a ramp. So edit parameter interface. Somewhere. Okay, yep, this is it. So cell noise, code, bindings. I'm going to make another folder. Well, we'll just put the ramp in here. It doesn't matter if this gets ugly. So we're going to go in here. We're going to put in a ramp. I'm going to call this map. Map. And this is going to be a simple ramp. This ramp is just going to be a sawtooth for now. It could be something else, but for now it's just going to be a sawtooth. Actually, we'll make it kind of like prairie style kind of roof, something like that. Then we're going to need, well, I should probably put this into some sort of folder like this, and this will be sourcing. Okay, so we're going to need a range. So this will be, we'll call it source S, and source S, and we'll duplicate this and call it source T, apply, and somewhere in here we see them. And I think what I'm going to say is if my force is above 10 and up to 100, actually not T, we might call this yeah, I think I'm going to call this F, and F is going to be fuzz. And so basically what fuzz, actually I just might call it fuzz. Fuzz is a different way of doing this. So we'll call it T, S and fuzz, and I'll show you what that means. So if we go down, where's our code again? Here's, and fuzz, we'll make the fuzz something like, we'll say if our force is greater than, I thought it was like 1,000. It was something huge. And we'll just say 100 for now. And we'll look at our code. So in our code bindings. Okay, great. So we'll do this. We'll go float my S because we're kind of working with S. And we'll go fit. We're going to fit force. Fit whatever our force is between CH S minus 0.5 times CH what did I call that? I've got it right here. So this. So copy. I'm going to make this a little easy on myself. Sorry. We're going to do this just slightly differently. Sorry for being all over the map on this. We're going to go float my F is going to equal CH that. So float my F, my fuzz is going to equal CH my fuzz. All right. Now we're going to go float my temperature is going to equal fit our force attribute, our force between my S minus minus 0.5 times my fuzz and my S plus 0.5 times my fuzz. And we're going to fit that between 0 to 1, right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to go my temperature equals CH ramp, my map, my temperature, right? And I guess one other thing we're really going to need is how much we're going to crank this up. So we'll just add an extra thing in here and go source amp. And we'll go my temperature times equals CH source amp. Now somewhere in here we had my U, if you remember, that had a nice little cell noise to it. And I think if we do this, we go my temperature equals times equals my U. There's places where we won't add any more temperature. And I think that could be nice. We could be stuck in the area where we want the whole thing to be a solid mass. But for now, I'm just going to let it be a noisy addition. And we go F at temperature equals my temperature. And then I think what we're going to need to do is hit OK and OK here. And close this. Go back up. Type properties. Go back in. And I'm going to start dragging some of this stuff back over. So sourcing, I'm going to, oh, source sample. I'll set this to something like 100, something crazy. So I'm going to grab this in, this in, this in, and the map in, and hit apply. And that should give us everything at the top level. Up. Got everything. And so if our source force is above 1,000, we're going to go a range of 100 units in, and we're going to ramp in and ramp out. And let's see what that does, because I think our force should be pretty strong. What was it? Our force is something like, well, our force is like negative 1,000. So the real thing is our force is a vector. So I'm being a little bit of an idiot. So we need to go back here to the code and just realize that it's not force that we're really concerned with here. It's the length of our force, right? So length, that would have been a big mistake. So we want to make sure that we're taking the length of the force. There we go. I'm glad I caught that. Length, just make sure right here in this long expression, we're looking at the length of the force. Go up and go up. And so this force was somewhere in the, looks like 10,000, right? So it's gonna be real easy to get to, 1,000. Well, let's see what happens. Oh yeah, forgot one other thing. And so we don't want temperature to equal that. We want temperature to plus equals that. Another little gotcha. I'm getting tired. All right, so let's do this. And on frame 4, so let's really crank up our temperature here. Remember, bring the parameters up. So right now we got it ramping down. We could not have it ramped down, and this just ramps all the way in. It ramps in and just stays in. And so we had a source of, we said if the source is above 1,000, let's just make the source above, that's probably the same. And let's just go 10. It should be really thick. And source will amp it up like something crazy. Like we should really see something crazy now. Let's see if we got something crazy. So on frame 4, I don't see crazy. Why don't I see crazy? So that my forces were multiplied by time inc. So the same things need to be applied to both my fuzz and my S, because I'm using really big numbers, but I'm forgetting that they probably need to be multiplied by the same at time inc that I was multiplying my force by. Sorry about that. It's easy to make little mistakes here and there. So I believe now that by multiplying these by the time increment, we should get ourselves back into seeing something sort of crazy. And I'll go back to setting this as something nutso. Let's just make sure that that was really the case. So here we go. Cooking along, and on frame 4, we're going to see our big explosion. Boom! And there's all that extra heat and density that is being added by a big explosion of a force, right? And I think this might be a little bit easier to, volume visualize, volume viz tab, volume visualization. And, boom. And this is, you know, again, we're not doing anything special here with any microsolvers yet. This is just using Metaball, a little bit of Renoy spacing, and remapping some of the areas of, and you're getting some what look like relatively pretty nice looking mushroomy looking clouds, and a really great sense of, like, if we do this, sorry I haven't really tuned in the volume visualization tool very nicely yet, but you can just get a good sense of how much that's just given us a great big explosion. Okay, so I'm going to do a little flip book and come back to you and show you that off at the end. You know, again, something very simple, just like a little metaball force, can go a really long way to getting you at the very beginnings of how to get somewhere. If you have any questions or want to get in touch with me, you can always hit me up at d4effects.com. All of my information's down here at the bottom. I haven't updated this website in forever, but again, just you can contact me through my Gmail or send me a text, and happy to help anybody any way I can. Cheers. Thank you.